So, one thing that I forgot to mention yesterday in my thoughts on consciousness is how external factors can affect us, right? And that's something that I refused to accept for a very long time. And I realized that that came from the root of this sense of control that my ego was holding on to. This idea that I could control circumstances around me just enough to not have to accept how they impact me. And that goes back to what I was saying about detachment and attachment to material things. When you find yourself practicing yoga, there's a clarity that your mind has to have. There is just this thoughtlessness that goes behind everything that you do. It's very similar to when you see someone doing something from memory. When someone is doing something from memory, their eyes will move back and forth. They're trying to recall clips, words, messages from their hippocampus. And you can tell that that person is distracted. So one thing about yoga is writing everything to memory, learning the postures, learning the names of the asanas, learning the breath work associated with that, your own obstacles, kind of like climbing a mountain. You get to know, oh man, after that sixth vinyasa, I start to get really tired. That sixth chaturanga, I'm just exhausted. You know yourself, and then maybe you continue moving forward, and it ends up being the eighth chaturanga that makes you exhausted or whatever. So you learn about yourself as you're doing it. But a lot of times people refuse to take on a yoga practice because of how difficult it is to silence the mind, how difficult it is to still the mind. And when the mind is not still, it makes the body work 10 times harder to do the most simplest things. So one thing that I love about Ashtanga is that it has taught me how to be able to take very overwhelming feelings and not suppress them, because there have been times on my yoga mat where literally I just like cried, just straight up, was right next to the yoga master, and then just had a memory and boom, was sobbing for a second. But then you don't stop the asana. You keep going, you keep pushing, you keep breathing. You have the emotional reaction, but you don't stop the practice. And really nobody comes over to you to try to like coddle you either, unless you need help or something like that. But I have had emotional breaks like that, emotional releases while doing yoga that are simply that they're just that simple. I'm like in a full plank. I have a memory from childhood that triggers me to literally gasp and start crying. And then boom, you're on the exhale and you're doing the upward facing dog. So there's just like no room to allow in this type of discipline the clutter of the mind, the distractions of the mind to stop you, unless you're willing to give up. And that is what distinguishes so many people from this sport, which is that if you are not able to calm the clutter of the mind, slow down the thoughts, you cannot do the physical practice. And the willpower to do that, the willpower to want to do the practice, is the root of that. It's kind of like the will to live. But like I said, external things happen, life happens, things change, and it's hard for us. It is hard to accept when those things that are important to us are also out of our control. But the beautiful thing about being a conscious, awakened being is that you can maneuver through life mindfully and choose joy over suffering and understand the root cause of your suffering. People debate this. Is it the attachment? Is it birth? Is it, our desires? Is it greed? What is it that causes suffering? Is it my emotions? Is it my pride? Lots of things can contribute to why we suffer. But there is a path, like the Buddha said, to liberation. And maybe it's all of it. Maybe it's every single one of the answers that we can come up with. Maybe it's different for every single one of us more than the other. Maybe birth is the leading cause for me, but maybe global warming is the leading cause for you. But we both suffer those things. I suffer global warming and you suffered birth. You cried at birth too. So there's this sort of like catch-22 when you start to look at people through the lens of knowing yourself. Because once you start to look at others through the lens of knowing yourself, you can no longer begin to identify with those things that were unique to you. And that is a very scary thing for the ego. Because I can say, well, okay, I'm 29 years old. I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I do yoga. That is a very Camila thing. That is what Camila does. Camila is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and she does yoga. But the same experience that I had doing those unique things is the same experience that maybe an 11-year-old child has when learning how to walk with new braces. Right? So those are two polar opposites and extremes. But what I'm trying to get at is that the idea that we are one and the same challenges a lot of the construct of thought that we have towards who we are and what we do in life, what we're doing, what is our purpose. And surrendering myself to the lack of control that I have, the lack of omnipower that I have. Even though I try to achieve that, right? I try to achieve godliness, godlike nature. But I kept coming into the same thing over and over again. Well, if I'm putting myself where God is, then where am I leaving room for who I truly am? If I think I know who I am and I'm putting that where God is, then how do I know that I'm not lying to myself? And if I'm lying to myself, then am I lying to other people? And that's a very frustrating conundrum to be in. No, I know who I am, but that's not who you are. No, it's not logical. See, if I know who I am, and I see the same light in other beings, then the same light in me that is honoring and recognizing the light in the other being is identifying with the sameness of that other being. Essentially saying that we're one and the same. And even though you've had unique circumstances, that doesn't mean that I am any better than you or any worse than you. And then starts to fall apart the crumbling of the persona development and the ego that says, no, but wait, I need control. I need you to either dominate me or make me submissive to you. And when we start to ask that of other people, as we get older, a small sense of insecurity starts to take place where we start to question, but was there anything meaningful behind what I've done all my life, what I've done to get here? And that's why a lot of religions, a lot of philosophies focus on surrender. Surrendering with faith to the Supreme Controller, to God, to your own Buddha nature. Surrendering to the divine nature of the self and the eternal consciousness. But we suffer in this life. And then sometimes when we suffer in this life, we begin to question our worthiness. Am I worthy of being one with the divine? Am I worthy of being a part of the conscious awakening of humanity? Am I worthy of even speaking my mind? And the beautiful thing about faith, the beautiful thing about knowing the spirit within you and knowing yourself and knowing the same self within you, the same consciousness within you is the consciousness within the other, that allows us to root ourselves in something that is indestructible. And that thing that is indestructible, that thing that is permanent, is something that we can know, that we can build a personal relationship with, an intimate one with, and cultivate more deeply so that we can fortify that faith, that belief, that strength within ourselves, that empowerment. And that is the power behind compassion and kindness. Knowing yourself knowing the true nature of the self, and then seeing that in other beings. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, it states, it is a great yogi or a rare personality who can see me in all beings. Because it's a lot of work. First, you gotta turn off the noise for just a second. You gotta tell yourself, you know what, wait a minute. I've been listening to myself talk to myself for years, ever since I can remember, and I haven't gotten myself anywhere. So what if I just silence all that for a second? And then when you get to the point where you're able to take a step back a little bit from the mind and observe it, observing the mind. Many of us are very familiar with this. It's introspection, right? We all have the cognitive ability to be able to evaluate ourselves, so to speak. But if you begin to look at life through the lens of this sameness, of this connection that we have, this universal consciousness, and you begin to stop the discrimination and prejudice externally, you begin to realize that you're actually doing it to yourself as well. And when you stop doing it to yourself as well, then the true nature of the self begins to unfurl like a flower. And when we begin to observe that true nature of the self, non-discriminately, non-hatefully, but with love, acceptance, and equanimity, we find that it is possible to begin to hear a voice, hear a spirit that speaks through you. Very, very gently, that says, hey, I don't think you should turn that corner. I think that there's something over there that you need to be protected from. And I know that for the longest time you've been barreling through life and you have been the one that is in control, been in the lead. But for just a second, can you just take a step back and let me guide you? And when we start to listen to that inner voice that guides us, well, we begin to see miraculous things. We begin to see marvelous and beautiful things that lead us to marvelous and beautiful things. And if that's what you're looking for in life, marvelous and beautiful things, then I invite you to sit for a moment with your eyes closed, to allow the energy of the body to settle down completely. Feel the radiation coming from within and slowly return it to the root. And as this energy, this prana begins to settle, take in a deep breath. Breathing in into your third eye and ask yourself one question. Who am I? And as you exhale, take this question and give it to the divine. And then on your next inhale, connect with your answer. So that's it, everybody. I am going to keep this one pretty short because I feel like that the more that I am consistent with the message and clear with the message, then the more easily I will be able to do this on a daily basis. I really hope that my talk has helped you in some way be able to break free from any boundaries or any limits or that wall that is stopping you from being yourself. And I hope that you know that yourself is backed by the divine, that the divine is always there for you, and that the divine truly does have an eye looking out for you. So, peace, love, and namaste.